close to 7 decades after his death and 118 years after he formulated arguably the most important theories of physics, Albert Einstein's mystique not only endures but appears to grow. The applications resulting from his theories, such as the Global Positioning System or GPS, automatic sliding doors, remote controls, and even shampoos, have been so internalized in our daily lives that we do not even realize that their origin was in one brain. Award winning writer and journalist Benjamin Cohen chronicles Einstein's astonishing legacy, not just in terms of the spin off applications, but even how an organization that he founded to help rescue refugees continues to remain a global force for good. Cohen's book, The Einstein Effect, due for release on July 18th by Sourcebooks, is at once a delightful and informative insight into the varied impact of someone considered the world's first true celebrity. Benjamin Cohen spoke to my Chai Reports. First of all, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and many congratulations on your upcoming book. I think July 18th is the release.
Yes, July 18th. It comes out on next Tuesday. Yeah, very excited.
How wonderful! How wonderful! You know, in many ways, Einstein to me is like Vincent van Gogh in the sense that people across the world love him without really getting into the essence of his genius. It's a nebulous idea of a genius, and that's that. I'm talking about people who are not into physics. What do you think? Because you've written a whole book about this.
Yeah, I think that is why he's so beloved, is because people do not understand uh, his science. Um, there was a famous story of Einstein and Charlie Chaplin were on a red carpet together, and more people were cheering for Einstein. And Einstein and Chaplin's like, "How? Why are they cheering for you?" I mean, Einstein's like, "I don't understand it. Why are they cheering for me?" And Chaplin said, "It's because they don't understand everything you're saying, and so they can put whatever they want on a layer on top of you, and they can, make you into any kind of idol that they wish." And I think today, and especially like my book, I'm not a scientist, but like I think today more people relate to Einstein, like you were saying, as this paragon of genius, and who they don't understand. They're not scientists. They're not physicists. They don't understand quantum mechanics or the theory of relativity. And they're just looking at him as this brand, almost as this icon of genius. And I think that's what makes him so special, is that he represents that.
Yeah, in a sense, he has been deified, quite
Yeah.
ironically for someone like him. And I think, as it happens with deities, people just worship them without really getting into the mechanics of why they worship them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he came about at a certain time, in the 20th century, where people were placing their faith in science, almost in a certain sense displacing religion. And Einstein was deemed, like you said, a holy man. He was a new messiah. His quotations were cited like proverbs. And, I think had he been alive at a different century, maybe it would have been differently. But I think people placed a lot of faith in science at that time.
Right. Your the publicity blurb on your Amazon display says, and I quote, that you have sort of a bizarre side hustle as the manager of Einstein's official social media accounts, which have 20 million followers. That's a huge number,
Yeah.
more than most living celebrities, it seems.
Yeah.
And then you, in your book, you talk about how you reached out across the world to understand this never-ending relevance. Give me a broad brush view of why do you think that is?
Well, that's a big question. I like we said a minute ago. I think everyone relates to Einstein. You go up to a kid in India, in America, anywhere, and you say, name a scientist, name a genius, they're going to say Albert Einstein. He's just, he's so recognizable. And so, as the manager of his social media accounts, it's an awesome responsibility to represent him to a new generation of people. Um, and so many people are inspired by him. It's not just scientists. For my book, I interviewed artists and celebrities and all sorts of people who are inspired by Einstein.
Yeah, I was going through some of the references about your book online. One feature that recurringly struck me was the book having been written with a great deal of sense of humor. Is that deliberate, or is that who you are, or what was the reason for an approach like that? But I think that's the only way to approach a subject like this.
Well, I think there's a bunch of reasons. First of all, Einstein himself was very funny. He was very sarcastic. He liked to tell a good joke. He was not a formal, proper, social niceties type of person. He always was interested in a good joke. Um, and then like my personal writing style is a very I try to be as approachable as possible in my writing. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. I like to call myself a likable idiot. And I try to be the average Joe, the everyman. And I've read so many Einstein books while I was researching this book, and many of them are written as biographies, as histories, science books. And I was trying to fill a void, and try to make something that was had much more mainstream appeal. And so that's why humor for me is just that's my style, and I think it would be a good way, a good entry point for people to connect with Einstein. Yeah.
Speaking of serious books, there are two right behind me. One is, of course, the celebrated Walter
Oh, I
Isaacson
see it.
one,
Yeah.
but the other, which is to me more special, which is a very thin volume by Einstein himself. It says Relativity, the Special and General Theory. It's a pretty austere title.
Yeah.
Very, I mean, very scientific. My background is physics. Not that I understand all of it, but I have a broad handle on it. From this to your book, for me, it's quite a leap. And yeah, there it is. Even the way it looks is so attractive, so colorful. It just draws you in immediately. So
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I hope
Hopefully
you
soon.
enjoy it.
Yeah. Tell me, I'm very curious about the fact that you are sort of the avatar of Einstein on social media. What does it feel like?
Um, like I said, it is an awesome responsibility to be, the voice of Einstein to 20 million people. I get nervous sometimes, sometimes when I post on my own Instagram account, like I post a picture of my dog or my pet, I'm always nervous that I'm going to post it accidentally to Einstein's social media. But I have to make sure we do obviously a lot of fun stuff. I post old pictures of Einstein and quotations from Einstein, and a lot of the fans send in artwork, pictures of Einstein. People love drawing Einstein or painting Einstein, so we share that. But I also share a lot of science articles
Right.
and show how Einstein's theories are still applicable today and how scientists are making new discoveries based on Einstein's research. And I always have to be sure, I'd be very careful that I'm sharing correct information. The last thing I want is for Einstein to share fake news or
Right.
something that's false. So I always have to be very careful, of the source, that it's a reputable source about where I'm getting information from. And relatedly, I have to correct a lot. There's a lot of people on social media, as I'm sure you know, who are posting, fake Einstein quotes or stuff that's not true about Einstein. And, I can't correct all of them, but when I can, I like to correct the record. There's a famous story. I put this in the book. Ivanka Trump once shared an Einstein quote to her Twitter page, and it was not a real Einstein quote. And
Indeed.
so I had to correct her and say that's not an Einstein quote. And the reason I know, not that I've memorized all the Einstein quotes, is that the Einstein estate has put out an official book of Einstein quotations, and it's divided into three sections. One section is these are real quotes by Einstein. The second section is we're not sure if these are Einstein quotes. And the third section is we know for sure Einstein didn't say this. And so I have a digital copy of that book, and so I can easily search on my computer quickly, about real Einstein quotes.
What did she say?
It was actually something about
No, I'm saying,
facts.
what was her response after you pointed out
Uh,
that? Was she upset? Did she take it down? What happened?
no, she didn't take it down. It's still there.
Well, that
um,
It
but
runs in
but
the family, I suppose. So
but it made international news. A lot of newspapers, the Huffington Post, Newsweek, a lot of newspapers wrote about Einstein correcting Ivanka Trump. So it was pretty
it
funny.
was funny, yeah. Speaking of the modern day apps, you talk about it, and it's been quite well known. Right from something like the extraordinary people, I don't know why people take it for granted, but the extraordinary global positioning system, GPS,
Yeah.
to even sliding glass doors coming from the photoelectric effect or your remote control. It's a mind-boggling range of apps that have come out of Einstein's theories. Uh,
Yeah.
Tell me a bit. I'm sure you were. Those were some of the points you were making in your book.
Yeah, that's probably one of the main things I wanted to show in my book is how Einstein's fingerprints are on so many aspects of our daily lives. As a matter of fact, most most of these things all come from a single year, 1905, when Einstein was just 26 years old. Historians call it Einstein's miracle year.
Right.
And he came up with four papers that really turned science completely upside down. And a lot of the stuff he came up with during that year we still are the beneficiaries of. So, like you said, GPS, the global positioning system, works. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist. I don't want to go into all the details, but if you're driving in your car and so you're moving and the Earth is spinning and the satellite in space is moving, so all three of those things need to talk to each other and figure out exactly where you are and where you're going. And Einstein's theory of relativity works out the calculations for that. And so I actually read somewhere that if we did not have Einstein's theory of relativity, if you were in your car, you would veer 7 miles off course
Right.
without GPS. So,
Right.
Think about that the next time you're in an Uber or you get an Amazon package delivered to your house. They're all using GPS to do that. And then the other one you said, the photoelectric effect, which is basically that light waves can
Right.
produce energy. We see that, like you said, when you go to the grocery store and you step in front of the door and the door is open. Remote controls, when you hit the remote control to change the Netflix movie you're watching, that's because of Einstein. So a lot of the stuff in the book, while it's not a science book per se, there is a lot of science and technology in the book. And I wanted to show people that Einstein, even though he died almost 70 years ago, he's still with us every single day.
70 years later, he's still opening doors, right?
Literally, yeah.
Indeed, indeed. You had mentioned during our earlier communication that you get some of the biggest responses from India.
Yes.
Of course, Einstein has an exalted status in India. I grew up with that in mind. Uh, if you don't mind, share a bit. What kind of have you had any interactions with people from India about this, or do you track what they say on your Twitter handle, etc.?
Like you said, I would say um, sometimes even more than the United States, India is the number one country for Einstein's fans on
Right.
social media. That's across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I mean, I see the most comments from India. I get the most messages from people in India. Remember, I was telling you about how people send me artwork of Einstein. It's a lot of it comes from kids in India. Um, he was there are famous physicists from India that Einstein worked with and Einstein collaborated with. There's
Right.
I don't
Dr.
fully
Bose.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bose Einstein
And condensate. Yeah.
condensate,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Bose is an Indian
Yeah.
physicist. Um, so yeah, it is the most popular country. Sometimes it's the second most popular after the U.S., but it's up there in the top one or two. And I always tell people because people ask me. Sometimes people want us to promote stuff on our page. I'm trying to think. Oh, there was a new Einstein coffee table book,
I
and it
see.
had all these interesting Einstein photos in it. And they wanted me to promote it on Einstein's social media. And I said to them, I said, "Is the book available in India?" And they said, "No, it's not. You can't get it in India. It's hard to get it there." And I said, "Well, most of the people who look at this page are from India, so I don't know how helpful it's going to be."
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. Indians have traditionally worshipped knowledge.
Mm,
It's like religion.
yeah,
Knowledge is religion for a lot of Indians, and it's steeped into the country's culture. That partly explains.
yeah,
Interestingly, we talked about the range of things that from GPS to automatic sliding doors. Uh, this resided in a brain that's been a matter of great fascination for decades. You have a remarkable story about how you tracked down Einstein's brain and how it was first stolen.
Yeah,
Tell me that story. That's quite a story to
it is
recount.
a story. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. This is the way I got it first. The first way I got obsessed and interested in Einstein was when I was in my 20s. I was in college. I read a book about Einstein, and the book was about the pathologist who performed Einstein's autopsy in April 18th, 1955. He literally cut open Einstein's head with a saw and took the brain out and stole the brain. I like to call it the greatest heist of the 20th century. And so I read this story and I'm thinking to myself, and it's a true story. And I'm like, how come, we all learn about Einstein, we all learn about the Nobel Prize and theory of relativity, but how come nobody ever taught us about this story about Einstein? And it got me started on this journey of finding out all these other things about Einstein. So to answer your question, so this doctor had the brain. Now he took it not just to take it out of a weird morbid fascination, but he wanted to study the brain to see if Einstein's brain was unique in some way. Now it's hard to tell. It's the chicken and egg, debate.
Right.
Was Einstein born with this special brain, or did his genius make the brain what it is? So it's hard to tell. But the pathologist was not a brain researcher. So he cut it up into over 200 small pieces, and he would send little pieces to brain researchers around the world. But most of the brain was kept in jars in a cooler, in a beer cooler in his basement in Princeton, New Jersey. And for decades, that's where Einstein's brain resided. And so this pathologist died in 2007. And so nobody knew what happened to the beer cooler with the brain in it after he died. So that was something I wanted to find out. So I went on a quest to find the actual brain, and I did. And the story is in my book. And it's now owned. I don't want to say owned. I mean, nobody really owns Einstein's brain, but the person who now has Einstein's brain also lives in Princeton. He's also a doctor, and he let me come and visit him. And I got to hold it's in a jar, but I got to hold Einstein's brain. And yes, it's the last physical vestige of Albert Einstein, which is amazing that here I am holding it. But at the same time, it's like what we were talking about. It's like what Einstein's brain represents.
Right.
Einstein is not known for his fashion sense or for his music. I mean, for other things. He's known for his brain. And so to hold his brain and what it represents, I have to admit, it was a very spiritual experience to be so close to that.
He might as well have existed just as the brain, with no corporeal casing around that at all.
Exactly.
Because that was him, right? The
Yeah.
brain was Einstein.
Yeah, and he didn't really care about other things. He was a very slovenly person.
Right.
He didn't like to get dressed up. His wife once said to him, they were having guests at their house for dinner, and his wife Elsa said to him, "You need to get dressed up. We're having guests tonight." And Einstein replied, "If people want to see my clothes, they can go in the closet and look at my clothes. I don't need to put them on."
But again, interestingly, he was ironically a glad eye. He liked women a great deal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I suppose his superpower was residing in his skull.
Yeah. But to your point, he was a very approachable person. So many scientists are in this, ivory tower, and nobody can talk to them. Nobody understands them. Einstein really was a man of the people. He would walk around Princeton, and kids would come up to him and ask him for help with their science homework, and he would help them with their science homework. And when he would walk down the street, the paparazzi, he was the first modern day celebrity. The paparazzi would chase him down the street. And when there's a famous story in 1922, he went to Japan, and he went outside his hotel room and standing on the balcony, and there were tens of thousands of people, trying to see him at, up the balcony, like he was a rock star or something.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, my background is physics. I've read a great deal. In 1905,
Yeah.
I mean, you did refer to it in some detail. What a year! I mean, I don't think there has been anything like this ever, since or before. to have four papers that fundamentally altered everything that we know about the universe and what we are. It I'm surprised nobody has made a movie that is just titled 1905.
Well, first of all, the Einstein Estate, the Einstein Estate has a website called
Yeah.
shopeinstein.com where you can buy Einstein t-shirts and coffee mugs. They actually sell some t-shirts that say 1905 on it. So you can do that. But I have an entire chapter. I don't know how good it shows
Oh,
up.
I can see that. Yeah.
I have an
Yes.
entire chapter in my book about Einstein's miracle year. I will say this. You were talking about a movie.
Right.
That's the most scientific chapter in my book because you have to explain, what these four papers happened. So maybe that's why a movie hasn't been made on it. But I think there's an interesting. First of all, he was so young. I couldn't believe that all of this happened when he was only 26 years old.
Yeah.
He was working at the patent office at the time, and Walter Isaacson, in his book that you have behind him, makes an interesting point that because Einstein worked at the patent office, he had this unique ability to take technical drawings, technical information, and visualize how it could be used in a practical way.
Right.
And seeing all of those patent applications day after day after day, this is what Walter Isaacson says, is what enabled Einstein to come up with these four papers during that year. It's interesting. I also interviewed someone who wrote a book about hot streaks. Like when you're a sports and you have the hot hand and you're
Right.
always shooting the basketball because you're doing really well. And he said there is a science of having a hot streak, that one
Right.
success begets another success. And so I think there was some of that as well. We see that with Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote many of his plays in quick succession after each other.
Right. I'm interested to know your approach to the book while you were drawing an outline or visualizing in your mind what it might be. Is it a freewheeling approach, or you have given it a structure? Given your personality, I think it seems like a freewheeling approach.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not a historian or a scientist. If I was, I think I would have more of a better outline. So, the book is probably, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 chapters, and each chapter is about a different element that I found interesting about Einstein. So we have a chapter about the brain, we have a chapter about GPS, we have a chapter about Einstein's miracle year. I also have a chapter in there just to show the breadth of Einstein's impact. Einstein when Einstein fled Nazi Germany in the early 1930s, he fled to America and he wanted to save his fellow German Jews. So he created the International Rescue Committee, which was this humanitarian organization to help refugees. And that organization is still around today. It's one of the largest humanitarian aid organizations around today. And so I interviewed people who are today, like I interviewed a Ukrainian refugee who was rescued in the war with Russia, last year, thanks to Einstein's organization. And so there's a chapter in the book about Einstein's humanitarian work.
Right.
And so I was, like I said, just wanted to show there's a chapter about Einstein in pop culture. There's been a lot of movies and TV shows made about Einstein. So I was just trying to show, because I guess, like you said, that is my personality. I like to dabble in a lot of different things. And so I was trying to show how Einstein is relevant in all these ways. And hopefully that'll attract readers, some science readers, but also some non-science readers as well.
I read a couple of things about you. One is, of course, you are the son of an Orthodox rabbi. And the other, somebody commented that Ben is interested very much in the news and Jews. That was, tell me, how does the son of an Orthodox rabbi come to this side and produce a book like this?
So, as you said, I am the son of an Orthodox rabbi. All of my siblings either became rabbis or married rabbis. I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the only one that did not become a rabbi. But my day, the Einstein book is not my day job. It's my side job. My day job is as news director of The Forward, which is the largest and oldest Jewish newspaper in America. It's been around for 125 years, since 1897. As a matter of fact, in our archives, there is a lot of articles about Einstein. They're actually written in Yiddish from the early 1900s, where they were interviewing Einstein. One article interviewed Einstein's mother, and Einstein's mother in Yiddish, she said the word Gornish. She said, my son, I thought he was going to be Gornish. And Gornish means zilch or nothing. Like
Oh,
Einstein's mother didn't think he was going to amount to anything.
well, speak of low expectations of your child, yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually, and my first book, it was
Uh-huh.
called, it was a like you said, I grew up in this Jewish household, and we actually had a synagogue in our house,
I
and
see.
I grew up in the American South, where it's the Bible Belt, and there's churches on every street corner, and the people going to church seemed, the church parking lots were full every Sunday. Everybody looked very happy. And in synagogues are not full every weekend unless it's a
Yeah.
bar mitzvah or something special or a holiday. And so I wanted to find out what was going on. And so I went to 52 different churches on 52 different Sundays. And I wrote a book about that experience called My Jesus Year. So my interests are very wide, religion,
Yeah,
science, pop culture.
I can see that. I can see that. But I often, this is of course on a lighter note, I often wonder about people who have the last name Einstein, not related to him necessarily. Should they even have it? I believe like an iconic jersey number, Einstein as a last name should be retired, don't you think?
Well, anyway, I don't know if that's funny. I've never heard someone say that. But these people, a lot of these people are tangentially. So there's another chapter in my book is called With a Name Like Einstein. And I
Yeah.
interviewed over a dozen people with the name Einsteins, including 2 Rabbi Einsteins. And they're all somehow related to Einstein.
Okay.
It could be like, fifth cousins twice removed, but they're all somehow related, and they all take pride in it. It's something special for them. Yes, many of them were made fun of when they were kids in elementary school, and people were saying, "Oh, you must be so smart. You're an Einstein." But beyond that, most of them, I interviewed some women who had gotten divorced. They had married an Einstein and they
Oh.
gotten divorced, and as part of the divorce, they wanted to keep the name Einstein because they liked it so
That's
much.
hilarious. That's hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah.
what about Einstein bagels?
So that's interesting. Einstein Bagels is no connection
I
to
know.
Einstein. As a matter of fact, the Einstein Bagels, it's based on these 3 brothers who are named Einstein, if you look at the logo. But
Right.
those 3 brothers are fictional characters. They're not actual Einsteins. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, it turned out someone found out the original owner of Einstein Bagels was somehow connected to the Nazis, which was
I
not the
know.
most Einstein thing you
No,
can
not
think
at.
of.
Speaking of fictional Einstein, 70 years, nearly 70 years after his death, he he's beginning to seem like an apocryphal fictional figure now.
Yeah.
Maybe 100 years down the line, people would find it difficult to believe that someone of this caliber even lived, like he said of Gandhi, that generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this lived on this planet. It could well be said of Einstein.
Yeah. He was the first and only person of the century. Time magazine in 1999 named him person of the century over Gandhi and
Right.
JFK and Martin Luther King and
And
all these
rightly
other
so.
people.
Rightly so. Rightly
Yeah.
so.
But I think it's because of what you were saying, because he's so beloved, because it's so much more than just his science. His impact, was so vast in science and humanitarian efforts and just in the world at large, that I think he's a once in a lifetime character. And so, what do you say? Like, what are people going to think 100 years from now? What do we think about Galileo or
Right.
Shakespeare? It's like it
Maybe
is
the
hard to
same
believe.
reverence. Yeah, the
Yeah, it
same
is hard to
reverence.
believe that someone like Shakespeare existed and created all of these works.
Right.
It is hard to believe that.
Do you think, I mean, at least it's my impression superficially that your book could be optioned for an interesting movie?
From your mouth to God's ears.
Sure. Because if there was an imaginative, if I had the money, trust me, I would turn this into a cinematic feast. Just take the simple chapter about his brain and
Yeah.
several pieces having been sent to so many people.
Yeah.
Imagine if each piece of his brain has a distinct personality, and starts talking from that particular jar. Now that's such a hilarious little piece of comedy that can happen from there.
That's funny. Yeah, obviously there's been a lot of Einstein movies. There actually is a movie about the brain that just came out a couple months ago, a documentary.
I
It's
see.
called The Man Who Stole Einstein's Brain, and
Oh, I
I'm
see.
actually
Okay.
in the movie. I'm one of
Oh,
the
you
people.
are.
Yeah, I'm actually one of the people that talks in the movie. But it's a documentary. It's not a fiction. It's not a
Yeah, right,
acted
right.
movie. Yeah.
No, this is fascinating, Benjamin. I'm so glad that I reached out to you, and then more importantly, you responded. That's not always the case, but this is terrific. My many congratulations to you on an imaginative adventure in Einstein's life, and may you become an absolute humongous New York Times bestseller.
Thank you so much. I hope
Yeah.
so. This has been great.